out for insight and cry aloud for understanding. And if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding, and he holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk is blameless, for he guards the course of the just and protects the ways of his faithful one. This is the word of the Lord. Our God and our Heavenly Father, we are truly thankful unto you for this new day which you have given to each and every one of us. We say thank you, Lord, for your grace and for your mercies, mighty God, towards us. Lord, in your word, you said to us to trust in you with all our hearts. Lean not unto our own understanding, but in all our ways acknowledge you, and you shall direct our path, mighty God. And so, Father, as our leaders have come today, Lord, to deliberate on matters, Lord, and business pertaining to Montserrat, God, I pray, Heavenly Father, that you would direct their path in the name of Jesus. I pray, God, that you would download your wisdom, your revelation, your knowledge, and your understanding. Heavenly Father, I pray that whatever decisions that are made here today, God, would push Montserrat forward, Lord, and it would be to the benefit, Lord, of this land. We pray for your blessings over this meeting, over our leaders, and over Montserrat. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Confirmation of minutes. Papers to be laid on the table.
I recognize the Honorable Financial Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to lay the following papers, and in this honorable I rise in this honorable House to lay the following papers appearing under the name of the Financial Secretary. SRNO 51 of 2025, Consumption Tax, Roosevelt Gemot, Exemption Order 2025. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to lay on the table of this honorable House the following paper appearing under the name of the Attorney General. SRNO number 1 of 2026, Public Hospital Amendment Regulations 2026. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Reports from committees.
I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the House has selected 2 committees, the Standing Order Committee and the Police Act and Regulations Committee. The Standing Order Committee continues to meet, and we are progressing the review of the draft standing orders. With respect to the Police Act and Regulations Committee, that committee has also met, and letters were sent about the Commissioner, the Deputy Police, and the committee also has representative from the Police Association. Members of Parliament met and held discussions with Advisor Victor Marshall, who is advising on the regulations, and I would say, Madam Speaker, insightful and helpful discussions were held. We will continue to meet in both committees, and we meet on a Tuesday of each week.
Ministerial statements.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education and Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm delighted, Madam Speaker, to talk on the success happening in the ministries to which I have been assigned. In education, we are tackling the decades of neglect. Under improving learning outcomes, we have managed to put together a team of specialists in a unit which overlooks the Montserrat Secondary School. We have a project manager for education transformation, education psychologist, behavioral specialist, special education needs coordinator, a numeracy specialist, and a standards and excellence partner that will link safeguarding to everything that we do in education. The Cabinet has approved funding also for a special education unit. This is a facility which will positively transform the lives of students who require support in particular areas. So for some students, the needs may not be obvious, such as having a few deficits in maths and English which keep their grades right down, and we want to be able to support these needs. And there are also students who have more profound needs who will spend a lot of time at the unit. We want to ensure that all our students succeed and all our students achieve and are able to be a useful part of society as we go forward. We will ensure that all students on Montserrat are assessed, so universal assessment of students, and we want to ensure that they are supported in their particular ways. I must also speak of numeracy, our 30 years post-volcano story, which despite before the volcanic eruptions, us having an education system which shone, our post-volcano story includes the migration of minds and inadequate funding, which has left us with a numeracy rate of around 50%. Our numeracy specialist has done his first 3-month assessment, and to get us out of our present situation, he's recommended numeracy specialists to all the schools, numeracy coaches for each school, learning tools, adjustments to the curriculum, adjustments to how maths is taught, adjustments to students' and teachers' perception of math, and adjustments to how teachers are graded or assessed for their teaching in mathematics. We trust that as a government, we're able to support these recommendations with funding for numeracy. Certainly within the ministry, we have a new spend request going forward that asks that we continue funding to this area. And ultimately, our government will be able to, with any luck, support the recommendations made by the specialists, and our students will be more likely to succeed and will be able to help us to create a stronger workforce and a stronger Montserrat. We are also hiring a literacy specialist who will teach our students to read, write, comprehend, and critically think. And this is needed as our literacy rate is unfortunately close to 50%. So by the time our students reach the Montserrat Secondary School, so many of them are unprepared for that moment. We will also, in education, be doing a lot of work with curriculum clarity. This, again, is one of our new spend requests going forward. We have funds in the ministry already that we're dedicating to the technical side of education. We await an assessment of our present situation by a team of experts in order to move swiftly on to training teachers in teaching some of the 32 technical and vocational subjects that CXC has to offer. Purchasing of equipment will come out of this as well, and we want to engage the services of local businesses, in particular where the trades align with what we're trying to do in TechVoc, to ensure that our students have the local experience happening and that our business persons are able to pass on the mantle or hand over this knowledge and experience to our students to make us stronger. In the ministry, we hope to create on graduation day at the Montserrat Secondary School a second row where the students who have championed the CBQ models will proudly take home prizes for their work. As United Alliance, our promise has always been to strengthen the workforce with trained and qualified persons to help us to grow the economy and to strengthen the island. Montserrat has signed a memorandum of understanding with Monroe University. So Monroe is a US university that has a branch in St. Lucia. They're offering scholarships to our students. In March, we have a wide Zoom meeting arranged to solidify plans for Monroe's first visit to Montserrat. And this falls under the heading in our ministry under our strategic objectives of helping the students to transition to tertiary education, which is really, really important. I'd like to thank a relative of the late Miss Janelle DeHausen, who taught generations of students on Montserrat. The person at Monroe who's helping us to sort this is her close relative who was not even born on Montserrat. Under the heading of helping with that transition to tertiary education, we've also asked the Montserrat UK office for assistance in helping some of our students who have made it off Montserrat, by using some of the students who have made it off Montserrat, who have succeeded in tertiary education, to either come to Montserrat or through a virtual presence to connect with our students at the Montserrat Secondary School to guide them as to what happens next. This post-secondary space is an uncomfortable space for many students with inadequate success during secondary education, an unsure path ahead. So the more guidance, direction we can give them, the better. The Montserrat UK office has also promised some mentorship for students, and we have also asked the Chevening alumni for this assistance. Child safeguarding and reducing vulnerability. Madam Speaker, as mentioned earlier, our Standards and Excellence Partner will be linking everything we do in education to child safeguarding. The breakfast program at the Montserrat Secondary School is about to roll out, as many students are hungry in the morning, which is the result of a combination of realities: inadequate income received by some families, work pressures of parents, early departure from home to get to school on time. So we're going to be providing the students at the MSS with a healthy breakfast. To keep students safe, we have placed security cameras on the MSS compound. The government and the ministry, so the government at large and the Ministry of Education, has a no-nonsense attitude towards child safeguarding. We must keep our children safe. We have also ensured to cut down any trees or bushes that are blocking the view to students in order to ensure that they are safe on the compound. We are seeking funding presently for after-school programs for students. Presently, like today at 2:15 p.m., when the MSS bell rings and the students get on the school bus, where are they really going? They're going to homes where their safety is not guaranteed because the parents are still working. Next month at the Budget Support Mission, we are also asking for funding for another Safe Summer program. Last summer, we managed to keep 225 students safe and engaged in interesting and useful activities in trying to create this ideal Montserratian student. So nobody is at home in the summer to look after them in many cases, let us not pretend. We are hoping to work closely with private providers for the other festivals, providing child-friendly, safe festivals and holidays on Montserrat, helping to keep our students safe all year round. We also could potentially follow in the safeguarding. We're also ensuring that students have a voice. We would like to thank the OECS for the digital survey that's presently rolling out. Montserrat is in the lead in terms of collecting data from the students. I would like to thank the principals, the teachers, and the students at the Montserrat Secondary School, the St. Augustine Primary School, the Lookout and Braids Primary Schools for their hard work in collecting this information. We're looking to achieve 100%. This is really important because we want every child to have a voice. Our Director General of the OECS would like to ensure that all students, including students who have even profound special needs, have a voice. And for this, we'll be asking the parents of such children to help with the translation of information or to represent the students in having this voice, as they have particular needs that we must represent. So we're looking for 100%, and I'd like to encourage the team to keep going until we reach that mark. Under teacher strengthening support and well-being, I will spend the next year gathering support in the Ministry of Health to have a cabinet paper that asks the cabinet to allow teachers to receive free care at Glendon Hospital. The teachers are hard-working, essential workers who struggle in our economy due to inadequate pay. Our plea in education is to have this for our teachers. Many struggle with their own health concerns. They struggle being able to afford medical intervention. And we need to make sure also that we put some focus on housing and how they're living generally. We're planning a teacher training college and have identified multiple locations for their training. And we're looking at digital aspects to help them with sort of digital governance of education, which will take some of the load off the teachers' shoulders and help us to be more organized in education governance. Under repairing and maintaining infrastructure, we thank the Ministry of Finance for the funds provided for the repairs so desperately needed in education. Safe infrastructure is essential. The OECS is asking for us to prioritize thermal regulation, for example, so air conditioning and ventilation in schools. This combined with solar energy can be a cheap solution to keeping students engaged on hot afternoons. Strengthening governance, we are still trying to set up a board of education in the secondary school and councils for special ed, tech, voc, and early childhood. And we're working on a new board for the Montserrat Community College to strengthen governance there. Under diaspora inclusion, we are continuing to engage with Montserratians in the diaspora formally through a monthly Zoom meeting where we hear from brilliant minds out there under education to give us advice to allow us to strengthen what we're doing in education with real-world experience, knowledge, and know-how. And in education, as in other aspects in this ministry, this government is big on policy writing. In education, we've begun the hard work of writing policies that will strengthen what we're doing in education. And we have a large group of experts that will be guiding us as we go forward. Looking at health and social services, the policy objectives in this ministry that hopefully will guide us this year will include taking healthcare out to the people. So the work is taking healthcare out to the people through mobile medical care, through boosting screening programs to ensure that we are finding our diabetic patients, hypertensive patients early, that persons who have complications of these conditions, so cerebrovascular disease increasing the risk of stroke, ischemic heart disease, other aspects of heart disease, that we'll be finding these persons early so that they don't present in late stages, because there's a lot that we can do in primary prevention to stop them from presenting with strokes and heart attacks in the first place. And again, as we went on about last year, peripheral vascular disease, circulatory problems are a big deal on Montserrat, and we would generally like to reduce death and reduce disability from the chronic non-communicable diseases. We want to also increase our efforts in finding cancers early through strong screening programs, through investigating patients' concerns and clinicians' concerns about patients' symptoms and signs. And we would like to standardize our care pathways for cancers, which will include where are we sending them. We need to know this information in advance. We'll be looking at registries for screening that will help us to remind patients to screen, and registries for cancers in general, for cancers that have already been diagnosed, and this will help us to monitor what's happening in the area of cancer, which will help us to plan for health. We are ready to adopt new mental health policy. I would like to thank the team for their hard work, in particular the many, many pages documented by our clinical psychologist for children, because child mental health issues are extremely relevant in the world, in the region, and on our island. So it's important that we not only adopt this policy, that we implement it to ensure that our students are safe. And some of the things are easy, ensuring their confidentiality, their safety, paying attention to social issues, and making sure that we have the right specialist support for our children. In emergency care, we are still awaiting the emergency medicine consultant for consultant-led emergency care. This was approved by the FCDO a year ago, so hopefully this will start soon. We are also still awaiting 24-hour doctor cover. There's work being done at this moment on this. We still await a memorandum of understanding with Guadeloupe to ensure that our patients with time-critical emergencies have access to Guadeloupe's extremely perfect tertiary care center. Guadeloupe, as you know, is only 20 minutes away from Montserrat, so work is presently still being done on this. And all of this to ensure that we are improving the quality of emergency care on island. And this is a long need and is a very important strategic objective in the Ministry of Health. The good news is that very soon we'll soon be allowed to fly at night for medical evacuations. So it is okay to have a heart attack at 2 a.m. And with this news, I believe the people of Montserrat can feel a lot safer being here, because massive heart attacks and major trauma do not only occur at night. So I would like to thank all those who worked hard on this and all those who pressured the point inside the ministry and outside of ministry and outside of government. It's really important that on this island we are safe and not just pretending to be safe. We would also in health have as in a strategic objective to create a culture of audit and research. We are waiting for a decision on who will lead in this area. Audit and self-assessment are keys to progress in any health system, so this is very important to us. Under looking at what we are doing inside health, Montserrat receives an assessment of its healthcare next month. I am excited to announce that Professor Cumming, who is the professor who oversees territories with aspects of health, he has organized a quality care commission type assessment of the health service, which will be happening in a couple of weeks' time. We look forward to the recommendations that are going to be made through this assessment that will help our service to grow. Important that our persons who work in health understand that this is not something punitive. We're not pointing fingers at people for their care. We are simply looking at aspects of care that could be done better, and then looking at the recommendations that are needed, the changes that are needed in order to bring us up to par with the international community in healthcare. Health financing conversations resume early this year with PAHO. We must get health financing right. This is how we pay for health care. When unwell, our patients, particularly our over 60 population, must not be faced with a decision as to whether or not they would like to live with a high cost of care or take a chance on living by signing away to high cost of overseas care. Persons on our island have chosen the likelihood of death because they do not want to leave high medical bills for their family members. So it's really important that we figure out how to support our Montserratian patients, our patients on Montserrat, in particular our patients over 60, who are those who are retired and do not have an active income, helping them to feel that we shall be taking care of them on this island in their time of need. For example, if they have a massive heart attack or are victims of major trauma or some other medical event. In environmental health, our workers are still seeking a hazardous allowance. So this is a very high-risk job. I pray to see some motion in this area. We need to support these workers. They work hard, they are underpaid, as are many, and it would be lovely to be able to give them this so that they know that we understand that their job is high risk, and they also know that their work is important to us. Without them, Montserrat would be a different place. We also need to arrange cleanup campaigns for Montserrat and to enforce our litter laws. This beautiful island does not want litter. I'm sure some of us want liquor. This beautiful island does not want litter. Please find a bin or take your garbage home. Driving around Montserrat over the past year, I'm noticing that people are dropping garbage on the road in public areas. We have had a culture of no thank you for litter for so many years on Montserrat. Excesses of litter, apart from being incredibly unsightly and off-putting for persons on Montserrat, it is a health hazard, festering creatures which spread disease. So we need people here not to litter, and I'm hoping that as a government, we will find a way to support our environmentalists who need our financial support and our support in general in helping to keep the island clean. Under the provision of social care, the elderly, Madam Speaker, while this government works hard on finding funding for elderly care, we urge local persons and persons overseas who have elderly relatives here to ensure that for older persons here, that their care arrangements are sorted. So there are persons overseas who are responsible for persons on Montserrat, and we're hoping that you'll pay close attention to their care needs as our government is working on ways to support patients locally, and in many ways this falls under safeguarding, but we need your support as well. So remember the elderly, not just in terms of finances, accommodation, and food, but they also need to have a rich life that involves social activities, engaging in conversation and interesting activities. So please help us to help our elderly. We also want to make sure that our workers in elderly care are adequately compensated, and we'll be working on that over the next few months. So, Madam Speaker, that's it, not to bore the populace nor the Parliament. Thank you for the moment to be able to communicate this information. And I would like to thank all those who worked hard in these two essential ministries on Montserrat and who have worked hard on Montserrat at large. And it is with enthusiasm that we as a team approach this new year. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a really wonderful and a very fulfilling new year. Best wishes to all.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Build.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, the honorable members, for this opportunity of keeping our people at home and abroad informed. Today, Madam Speaker, I wish to provide an update on our progress across BUILD's major infrastructure and utilities project and program portfolio. This update reflects continued movement from planning and procurement into execution and reports on delivery across utilities, energy, roads, public buildings, and port infrastructure. Madam Speaker, before the recent $5.9 million UK funding announcement for energy transformation, government was already executing the Priority Utilities Program. This was focused on strengthening water security, wastewater management, and overall system reliance. While the program spans water supply, water storage, and distribution improvements, wastewater represents the largest and most complex element and therefore warrants particular attention. For many years, Montserrat has operated with less than 1 day of effective water storage, leaving our people vulnerable to disruptions. Under this program, that vulnerability is now being addressed. Madam Speaker, works at Fogarty Spring have been completed, restoring and improving yields from key gravity-fed resource. Rehabilitation works at Hope Spring are ongoing and focuses on access, catchment protection, and overall system integrity. We are preserving and protecting our water supply, our resource. We also look forward to improved spring performance, which reduces reliance on energy-intensive pumping from the Bellam wells, lowering electricity demand and easing pressure on mechanical and electrical assets. Ultimately, Madam Speaker, reducing costs. In parallel, we have our reservoir rehabilitation and expansion works. These, Madam Speaker, are underway at our priority sites. Right now, Madam Speaker, we are mobilizing at Davy Hill. The tank has been removed and is going to be cut up into pieces for recycling. As these works are completed, overall storage capacity and system flexibility will continue to improve. We also target upgrades on distribution networks. We have done this at Palm Loop, and we are going to move to Lookout, reducing leakage, improving reliability. Fewer leaks mean less abstraction, pumping, and treatment, contributing to more efficient operations, better value, and protection for our people over time. Madam Speaker, we are preserving, protecting, in order to prosper and to build our five-star premium destination. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I would like to add there's a complementary water security initiative. Although we live local, we think global, and we act global, and so we are committed to advancing the United Nations sustainability goals. We're building partnerships, fighting climate change, and building sustainability while protecting our environment. And so the Aqua Revive is a green overseas program and is aligned with the European Union. Its objectives is to improve our priority utilities program. The initiative will enhance even further the Laurier Spring and we will climate-proof the Key Spring and catchment areas, strengthening system reliance and the source of supply. Rehabilitation efforts will always, Madam Speaker, be our priority for our water, ensuring that upgrades are moving in a modern way, and therefore we're installing metering equipment to measure spring output and reservoir performance. The data generated will enable Montserrat Utilities Limited to remotely monitor production and usage trends, identify emerging issues, and support timely on-site intervention where required. Together with the utility program, AquaRevive supports a more informed, resilient, and adaptive water management system. We say thank you, Madam Speaker. Waste management at Lookout and Margarita Bay. Madam Speaker, waste management is a critical public health and environmental responsibility, particularly in coastal areas where communities, recreation, sensitive marine environments intersect. This is not Government of Montserrat's first sewage wastewater system project. With government's wider improvement program, we had Drummond's and Davy Hill, where systems had failed or were operating beyond capacity and posed most immediate risks. At the time, deferring Lookout was a proportionate risk-based decision. Since then, conditions at Lookout deteriorated more rapidly than anticipated, requiring urgent emergency intervention to stabilize our wastewater flows and reduce risks. Cabinet supported the implementation of immediate emergency measures. And, Madam Speaker, as we progress to permanent infrastructure, these measures were temporary and designed to actively monitor and manage during this transition period. Madam Speaker, this is reducing risks to Lookout and the health of the wider community of Montserrat. The long-term objective remains unchanged: the delivery of a robust, resilient, and environmentally friendly wastewater system for the people of Lookout. In that context, Margarita Bay Wastewater Treatment Facility represents a permanent solution. The contract has been signed, offshore materials are being procured, and coordination is underway for site service, network connections, and construction. The options explored, Madam Speaker, will lead to longer-term solution. We have procured our 4 RBCs. The land has been surveyed, and in line with Cabinet direction and established governance processes, implementation would be managed and sequenced. The consultant would be on ground throughout the entirety of this project, from construction, Madam Speaker, to commissioning. In response to current conditions at Margarita Bay, government is applying a whole of Montserrat government approach, so environmental health, fisheries, environment, disaster management and utilities, coordinate, monitor public health safeguards, and environmental oversight. The area is a controlled area, and we're therefore asking advisories, follow these advisories that are given by the technical evidence, and will be reviewed as conditions change. Beyond our treatment capacity, the Margarita Bay also supports environmental recovery and coastal improvement, including better management of treated flows, protection of nearshore marine habitats, and the creation of managed coastal waters to allow treated water to disperse safely. These measures support public health, protect the marine environment, and enhance the long-term use and enjoyment of the coastline. Taken together, this reflects a responsible and precautionary approach, prioritizing the most urgent risks when decisions were taken, responding decisively as conditions evolved, and delivering a permanent infrastructure that strengthens resilience and safeguards Montserrat coastal environment. Madam Speaker, adopting from the Ministry of Mali, we are preserving, protecting in order to prosper. The contractor, ALS, will be on ground, as I said, and until commissioning. And after that, Madam Speaker, to ensure that all is well, we will be coming out to speak to the public about this soonest. Now for the Green Energy Transition Program. This flowed from 5.9 million funding given to us by the United Kingdom government for the period 2025-2026 financial year. I wish to register my immense thank you to United Kingdom government, the Minister of Energy, and the United Kingdom team that works with us, that is FCDO and the Governor's Office. What have been done thus far? Design development for the solar photovoltaic and battery energy storage system is well advanced. Site access works have been completed, surveys undertaken, and procurement of major equipment is being undertaken to support installation within the delivery window of March 31st. This is a very tight project deadline with risks of shipment and weather challenges, but we will endeavor, Madam Speaker, to deliver. Works are progressing to restore the existing battery storage system at Lookout, including installation, commissioning, and training for local technical staff, building capacity. Our transmission and distribution upgrades are advancing in stages, with coordination across utilities to minimize disruption and improve efficiency. The residents of Montserrat has endured for far too long. We hope, Madam Speaker, to lessen this struggle. As part of strengthening system resilience, works advancing to underground sections of the electricity distribution network at Lookout, reducing exposure to weather-related damages and improving reliability to the system. This intervention is expected to improve system performance and reliability even during adverse conditions. Building on this approach, planning is underway for similar undergrounding works at Drummond's, will be informed by lessons learned at Lookout and aligned with the broader transmission and distribution upgrades. With respect to geothermal, our recent technical assessment indicate geothermal potential in the order of 1 to 2 megawatts per well, subject to further testing and evaluation. Geothermal remains part of our longer-term energy mix under the active technical oversight. We have received the draft report and we await the report from Oxford University with respect to mineral testing. Madam Speaker, we could not have achieved this. It is for our people, and it's the partnerships and progress, works led by local people. Madam Speaker, I must commend and thank Honorable Reuben T. Meade, our Premier and Minister of Finance, for supporting Rolando Cassie, Marissa Allen and her team, Oswayne and Dr. Tiffany Howe. We cannot forget MUL team, CEO Julian Daniel, Kennard, Ryan, Vagan Darway, and Madam Speaker, give credit to whom credit is due. I know he would not like that, but our FS, Kenya Lee. Madam Speaker, I don't want to say, but he's a sergeant major when it comes to the finances, but that helps to keep us in line and achieve the excellence that we are striving for in all areas of our development. Key to receiving more funding is that we are able to complete the projects that we embark on. So, Madam Speaker, Now I move across road network. Active maintenance and rehabilitation and safety improvement works are being delivered. This is focused on preserving connectivity, restoring access, and addressing long-standing constraints across the island. Our beautification, Madam Speaker, is also underway, and it's a foundation for a 5-star premium destination. Many would have noticed that works have commenced on Garland Hill Road, improving this vital access route between Davy Hill and Little Bay. We would have seen what would have happened during the flash floods that we had last year. At Jones Hill in St. Peter's, road improvement works have been undertaken to be completed, resurfacing, drainage enhancement, and general rehabilitation. We are awaiting the arrival of bitumen to advance road works. So we ask our drivers, our pedestrians, all persons to be patient with us. At Causeway, works have commenced and will continue in order to widen the constrained bend at Murphy's Corner, that is along the northern main road. These works improve visibility, safety for motorists, pedestrian, and emergency vehicles, and address a long-recognized road safety concern while supporting improved access along the northern coastline. Again, Madam Speaker, I salute our Minister of Finance for supporting our endeavors in this way. At Bellam Valley and Isles Bay, work are advancing under the collaborative arrangement between government and private sector, Bilty, Mali, as we seek to restore access and address flood and safety risks. These include re-exhumation of Bellam Valley Bridge and re-establishment of the Isles Bay Access Road with engineering oversight provided by Public Works Department. Madam Speaker, I want to thank wholeheartedly the work gangs at Bellam site. It is back-breaking work. It is painstaking work, hard work that must be recognized by the Bilty team. The supervisor, Davon Williams, I'm not calling his name, does not like flowers, but I wish to give him his flowers. The dead cannot hear, nor can they smell. I am giving him and every man working on that project, Madam Speaker, restoring our crossing and connectivity. Madam Speaker, progress and prosper through partnership. A more secure, sustainable Montserrat. Again, Madam Speaker, I am not leaving out Honorable Dwayne Hickson. Where is he? There is a story to be told, and we'll tell that story at another time. But I would wish, Madam Speaker, to say thank you as well to Courtney Peters, who was there from the inception, our surveyor, the acting director, Mr. Prasad, and Honorable John Osborne, when we walked and looked at what could happen. Madam Speaker, thank you to all of them, and we will continue to demonstrate that we can work together to achieve. This area had been closed for near 30 years, Madam Speaker, and now look at what is happening. In relation to St. George's Hill, this has been also another area that has been closed. Now, Madam Speaker, with Public Works and its mobility teams supporting visitor access ahead of the cruise season, we've also taken from the grave our national treasures, our cannon. Madam Speaker, Honorable Wright, Honorable Reuben T. Meade was the man that led this as the Minister for Tourism. Madam Speaker, if I learn nothing more nothing more. With him, you think it, you say it, you do it. When there's a problem, you do not say it's the problem. He says, get it done. How can we get it done? This is the kind of mindset, Madam Speaker, that will definitely drive progress and prosperity. We will continue our refurbishment work. Again, when the Premier said we were going to use the money for this Honorable House, Madam Speaker, we were not very pleased because we know that we are still in need of that house. But clearly, Madam Speaker, when you look at the refurbishment work that is happening at the Cultural Center, that was work that was long overdue. And so that work is advancing. It is creating employment. There are several contractors on that site. It is led by the PMO and our 2 project managers, giving young people an opportunity. I wish to commend another 2 sergeant majors, leader Damon William and Venrick Forrester. They're ensuring that maintenance and compliance works are being undertaken in a very safe manner. Madam Speaker, as construction progresses on the new hospital, you have heard the Honourable Minister outline what is happening and what is going to take place in order that we can provide excellent health services to our people. It's about the people. And in supporting her, Madam Speaker, and I told her to let me know when we are not holding our own, we are testing for standards and safeguarding long-term performance. She has also spoken of night medevac capability. This is essential. And so we are supporting our health, protecting lives, as she would have explained, in advancing our medical capability. The airport tower, its internals are completed. The elevator is installed. I am letting a few persons test it before I test it, Madam Speaker. And it seems it's holding up pretty good thus far. They said I'm not so heavy, so nothing to worry about. We are also seeking to source an aviation lighting board to meet regulatory requirement. Madam Speaker, this requires strong, respectful partnership in order to progress and to secure a sustainable future for our people. And so, Madam Speaker, I want to commend Her Excellency, Mrs. Harriet Cross, for her support in this, Madam Speaker. She has established a small task force to advance the re-establishment of my medical evacuation at nights. She is supporting the government's ambition. Her Excellency and myself, we share responsibilities for the airport, infrastructure and operations, and security. This requires partnership, respect, and sensitivity. The task force involving the airport, emergency services, the local airlines, and technical officers is focused on identifying safety, lighting, and operational requirements to support night medevac departures while work continues towards full commercial night flight capability. This will be phased, safety-led approach, which allows government to strengthen emergency preparedness without compromising regulatory standards or ongoing infrastructure. Her Excellency, the Governor, Ms. Harriet Cross, the FCDO are working together with us to advance the work of the Manchester Airport Group on the John A. Osborne Airport. Madam Speaker, now to the Montserrat Port Development Project, upon which I wish to update. This is one of government's most significant and complex infrastructure investments. I know our people, and I recognize it and admit it, are port weary. Madam Speaker, in Montserrat parlance or patois, are we tired? Are we fed up? They want their port completed, and they deserve to have that ambition realized. And so, Madam Speaker, we continue to work with the contractors. The project is at a critical stage of delivery, involving specialized marine works, careful sequencing of offshore and onshore activities, and sustained coordination across multiple parties. We have already outlined this before, what we are doing. Progress against agreed milestone continues to be actively and robustly monitored through established governance and oversight arrangements. Of course, we are extremely concerned about the depletion of staff and the slow progress on the project thus far. But I've learned yesterday that 13 caissons were installed over the weekend. As the project moves through this phase, upcoming milestones represent important points at which government must assess progress, readiness, and alignment with the project's objectives and September 2026 deadline. It is a normal and necessary aspect of managing any infrastructure project of this scale and complexity. There is a process that must be followed. Government's focus remains on maintaining delivery discipline, ensuring that works are executed safely and to the required technical standards through robust monitoring and dialogue with the contractor and our partners, FCDO, towards the progress, Madam Speaker, of this port. Where milestones are reached, government will take the decisions required to safeguard the public interest, ensure value for money, and maintain the integrity of the project. We are committed to doing all we can to preserve the integrity of the port, protect the investment made by the United Kingdom government and the EU, and the prosperity of our people, which we expect to have or to be realized. Madam Speaker, updates will continue. I'll provide this Honorable House on key delivery milestones. People, it's all about the people. Partnerships for progress, for a secure, sustainable Montserrat. As I've outlined today, Madam Speaker, the works demonstrate active delivery across multiple sectors with a clear focus on our resilience, our quality, and long-term value for the people of Montserrat. Reducing pumping, increased use of renewable energy, fewer leaks, stronger quality assurance, and more resilient electricity and water infrastructure all contribute to lower operating pressures and improved efficiency, strengthening resilience, and supporting better value for all people over time. These investments speak to a wider ambition of a five-star premium destination. Reliable utilities, safe roads, resilient public infrastructure, well-maintained public spaces are essential for the foundations of Montserrat's aspiration to position itself as a 5-star premium destination, a place defined not only by natural beauty, but by quality, safety, environmental stewardship, and confidence in public systems. At the same time, this work and the work of the other ministries reflects the principle of one Montserrat. Infrastructure that serves all communities, strengthens connectivity across the island, protects public health and the environment, and supports opportunity for our people, residents, businesses, and visitors alike. Infrastructure may not always be visible in finished product, but it underpins everything: public health, environmental protection, tourism, economic activity, and the quality of life and national pride, I may say. What we are building now is the platform on which Montserrat's shared future will stand. I wish to place on record the government's appreciation for all the teams across the Ministry of Built. Madam Speaker, P.S. Colin Fergus, the Montserrat Utilities and his strategic team, MUL, all the contractors involved in delivery. In particular, I must acknowledge the leadership and sustained effort of Mr. Rolando Cassi, Ms. Marissa Allen, Mr. Felix Poussard, the Director of Public Works Acting, as well as all the teams, the hard workers, Madam Speaker. I want to highlight at this time the men that worked at Palm Loop. And I wish to encourage women. I wish to encourage women to get on board, get involved, gain a new skill. It's an opportunity for employment and for supporting your families. You may come and register with us at the Labor Department. We will support you. I also acknowledge the continued support of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Management, the FCDO, Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, Her Excellency, the Green Overseas Program, and all of whom have worked with us as these programs move forward. We continue to plan and to execute for our people. It's all about the people, building our one Montserrat, our 5-star premium destination where people want to live, work, study, visit, have fun, and find enjoyment. People, partnership, progress, and prosperity for a more secure, sustainable future for Montserrat, a wholly democratic country under God, as our SDP vision has taught us. God bless our people. I ask God to bless our partners, all of our projects across Montserrat, our private sector. God bless Montserrat and preserve us all from evil. Madam Speaker, thank you kindly for allowing me this time to address this honorable House.
Government notices, unofficial notices, questions.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to ask a number of questions. My first set of questions directed to the Honourable Premier, Minister of Finance and Economic Management. First question is, given that the United Kingdom retains constitutional responsibility for Montserrat's foreign affairs, can the Honourable Premier explain to this Honorable House the extent and limits of his participation in the recent OECS Heads of Government meeting on urgent regional and geopolitical matters. B, specifically, can the Honorable Premier state which matters he was empowered to deliberate on, advocate for, or commit to, and which matters, if any, required prior clearance, subsequent approval, or were expressly restricted by the United Kingdom? C, further, can the Honourable Premier clarify whether Montserrat's interests were fully and independently articulated, or whether they were constrained by the UK's foreign policy position, particularly on issues affecting regional security, economic stability, and relations with extra-regional powers?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I wish to inform that Montserrat is a full protocol member of the OECS, and as such can participate in all discussions of that body. In the event that the members do not have a copy of the communique from the Deep Caucus meeting in St. Lucia, I will share the attached communique for the information of all members of this Honourable House.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Question 2, Madam Speaker. With the national minimum wage now officially set at $12.50 per hour for a 40-hour work week, and the tax-free threshold remaining at $18,000 per annum, A, can the Honourable Minister confirm, Honourable Premier confirm, that minimum wage workers are now liable to pay income tax? B, further, can the Honourable Premier state whether the government intends to adjust the tax-free threshold upwards to ensure that the minimum wage earners are not taxed, or otherwise explained, how it justifies taxing workers earning only the statutory minimum wage in the current cost of living environment?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, if a worker works a sufficient number of hours as per year to pass the current threshold of $18,000, they will be required to pay the appropriate tax. However, Madam Speaker, it should be highlighted that a worker that is paid at the minimum wage, assuming 40 hours per week, 52 weeks per year, will earn an estimated $26,000 per annum, placing them above the threshold. They will only be liable for tax on the last $8,000 of their income, $7,000 of which at a tax rate of 5%, which will be $8 per week, and the additional $1,000 will be at 20%. Madam Speaker, the minimum wage adjustment was recently approved with an implementation date for after the 31st of March 2026. It must be highlighted that this government has taken significant steps to ease the tax burden and increase disposable income in the last year, both on the income tax and import and consumption taxes. Madam Speaker, while this government is committed to continue to relook the tax structure, it must be remembered that fiscal strategy cannot be implemented without proper analysis and discussion on the impact on the budget, and also the government's ability to continue to provide essential service at the appropriate level. Secondly, I am certain that as a former minister, the honourable gentleman remembers that we are not yet off budgetary support and must be able to justify our fiscal policies with the FCDO.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Question to Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Premier state whether the government intends to renew the duty-free incentives on white goods, and if so, provide a clear timeline for their reintroduction, in light of the ongoing damage to household appliances caused by frequent power outages and fluctuations in the electricity supply?
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, this government has taken steps to stabilize the power supply on the island. And it cannot be refuted that the power supply is now far more stable than in recent years. Madam Speaker, if it is as the opposition claims that the power outages have damaged the white goods, would our efforts and funding not be better spent on continuing to secure the power supply, as not to have frequent disruptions? This government has already reduced the cost of imports and will continue to seek fiscally sustainable strategies to continue to support the people of Montserrat. Offering concessions on white goods every year while not addressing the alleged source of the issue, that is, power outages, makes little practical, strategic, and financial sense, both for the government, MUL, and the people of Montserrat. Notwithstanding the aforementioned, I encourage the honourable member to not preempt the budget speech, which will outline this government's priorities for the upcoming financial year.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, one supplementary. And I'll show the Honourable Premier I will not present his budget speech. I'll refer to his comment and in the answer where you state that the government has done significant work on improving the outages. Can you, for the purpose of the public or the House, state what those are?
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am absolutely certain that the honourable member was listening to the report to this honourable House this morning by the Honourable Minister for Build, which indicated that we will be undergrounding the HV lines in the northern part of Montserrat, Lookout, Drummonds in particular, which is where many of the shortages were, which fed back to the power plant to shut down the power. That's one. Two, there have been constant upgrades to the power plant, and most of the faults, the majority of the faults, has not been as a result of power production. It has been a line issue. And we are, in fact, now seeking to have those line issues corrected by the 31st of March this year.
Recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Question 4, Madam Speaker. Carnival and Montserrat's wider cultural economy hold potential for creative sector employment, diaspora engagement, and destination branding. Will the Honourable Premier outline A, the government's strategy for developing the cultural and creative economy in 2026, including music, festivals, arts, and heritage? B, the annual budget allocation for Carnival and other cultural events. C, opportunities for diaspora and private sector participation? And D, how government intends to strengthen the exportability and monetization of Montserrat's cultural products?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, Carnival or festival and the wider cultural creative economy are recognized by government as important drivers of national identity, economic diversification, employment, youth engagement, and destination branding. In this regard, government continues to pursue a structured and sustainable approach to cultural development. Government strategy for developing the cultural and creative economy in 2026. In 2026, government strategy for the cultural and creative economy will focus on the following key pillars: strengthening institutional capacity, that is, continued support for the Montserrat Arts Council as the principal implementing agency for festivals, cultural training, and heritage preservation. Creative skills and development, investment in music, performing arts, heritage arts, and technical production through training programs, workshops, and mentorship initiatives, particularly targeting youth and emerging creative talents. Festival-led economic activity, leveraging major events such as Carnival / Festival, St. Patrick's Festival, Calabash Festival, and community-based celebrations to stimulate employment, micro-enterprise, and tourism demand. Cultural preservation and innovation, supporting traditional art forms such as masquerade, drumming, calypso, pan and folk heritage, while encouraging innovation. Alignment with national development goals, ensuring cultural initiatives contribute to youth development, social cohesion, entrepreneurship, and Montserrat's international image. The annual budgetary allocation for Carnival and other cultural events in this current fiscal, that is 2025-26, saw an allocation of $1.1 million, which provides for operational cost, major national festivals, and community-level activities, while the capital allocation of $229,000 directly supported the expansion of cultural training, creative industry development, and heritage programming under the Community Development Initiative framework. These allocations are supplemented where applicable by sponsorship, gate receipts, vendor fees, and other internally generated revenues managed through the Montserrat Arts Council. Budget levels are reviewed annually in line with fiscal priorities and program outcomes. Opportunities for diaspora and private sector participation. Government actively encourages diaspora and private sector participation through sponsorship and partnership opportunities, which include corporate sponsorships, branding, and in-kind support for festivals, competitions, and cultural programs. Diaspora engagement, collaboration with overseas Montserratian associations and creatives to participate as performers, mentors, judges, and cultural ambassadors. There are already members of the Montserratian diaspora who participate in and support cultural activities in practical ways. This includes promoting events internationally, particularly around St. Patrick's celebrations, also Christmas celebrations, delivering workshops, talks, and lectures during the Aliaguana Festival of the Word, and participating in competitions and cultural activities during the cultural festival season. In addition, members of the diaspora may be able to contribute through sharing expertise in areas such as music production, event management, costume design, marketing, digital content creation, and cultural documentation. There is also scope for cultural exchange with diaspora creatives, collaborating alongside local practitioners. Madam Speaker, the diaspora can also play a role in raising the international profile of Montserrat's cultural events and artists, supporting destination branding. There may also be opportunities for private sector and diaspora support through sponsorship, partnerships, and collaboration with cultural organizations. The creative and entrepreneurship, there are opportunities for vendors, designers, producers, musicians, technicians, and event service providers to earn income during the various cultural events. Public-private collaboration, encouraging partnerships that support production, marketing, and digital distribution. Strengthening exportability and monetization of cultural products. Government intends to strengthen the exportability and monetization of Montserrat cultural products by supporting digital distribution, that is, encouraging the recording, packaging, and online distribution of music, performance, and cultural content through streaming and digital platforms. Branding of Montserrat's culture, positioning Montserrat festivals, music, and heritage as distinctive Caribbean cultural products for regional and international markets. Capacity building, providing guidance on intellectual property, licensing rights, rights management, and professional standards for creatives. Cultural tourism integration, linking cultural products with tourism marketing, heritage experiences, and international cultural exchanges. Market access and exposure, facilitating the participation in regional and international festivals, showcasing the cultural exchanges where feasible. In conclusion, government remains committed to developing a resilient and inclusive cultural and creative industry that supports livelihoods, preserves Montserrat heritage, engages the diaspora, and enhances the island's global cultural footprint while operating within responsible fiscal management. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Tourism development requires capital, private participation, and new product offerings to stimulate job creation and competitiveness. Will the Honourable Premier provide the number and type of tourism-related investment proposals received or facilitated in 2024-2025? B, the number of projects approved and the projected job creation associated with each. C, the incentives available to our local and foreign investors. And D, whether government intends to introduce public-private partnership models for tourism asset development, including accommodations, attractions, and marina infrastructure.
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, it's interesting that the Honourable Member is asking that I inform this Honourable House on investment proposals which were received and facilitated in 2024-25. This seems somewhat duplicitous, particularly when this government was elected late in October 24, a mere 5 months before the close of that financial year. Consequently, any reporting which I present would reflect that time to current. Madam Speaker, a range of concessions and incentives are available to local and foreign investors. These are aligned with our strategies and policies for key sectors and industries. This includes tourism, which has been identified as a key growth sector. Provisions are made for duty-free concessions under SRNO 27 of 2021, which are customs tariff, the second schedule in relation to tourism, supporting investors in this vital area. Even now, Madam Speaker, officials are working on new incentives to target persons and businesses investing in luxury tourism accommodation, which we expect to be introduced in the coming months. This will help us to deliver the housing strategy, tourism strategy, and align with the government's strategic high-value, low-volume tourism model. Madam Speaker, tourism will be a key driver of economic development for Montserrat. That is why this government has made it a focus and is a sector we are actively cultivating investment leads in. We also remain committed to a new capital at Little Bay, incorporating tourism accommodation and services, which will serve as a social and economic center of the country for generations to come. Further demonstrating our commitment, Cabinet approved the reopening of St. George's Hill as a tourism attraction with a stipulated US $5 environmental levy per visitor, that is non-Montserratian, non-resident visitor, to support the sustainable upkeep of the area. More than 15 persons have been involved in the development of that project. So far, in relation to road cleaning, enhancement, signage, and safety features that were added to the area. This initiative enhances our tourism product by providing safe and structured access to one of Montserrat's most iconic viewpoints. And if I may say, Madam Speaker, over the past decade, that seemed not to have been possible. Tourist numbers continue to rise year on year, and we are laying the groundwork to ensure that the tourism sector is fully supported to meet the growing demands of this segment. The Department for Trade and Investment is currently examining a few private sector proposals, which, if successful, will make a huge difference in the fiscal outlook for Montserrat. However, these will all take time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I thank the Honourable Premier for answering questions posed to him. I now will present questions directed to the Honourable Minister of Buildings, Utilities, Infrastructure, Labour and Transportation. Can the Honourable Minister update this Honourable House on the status of the A1 project? Specifically, is the project abandoned? And if not, what is the revised scope of works, the reason for any changes made, and the new timeline for completion?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Build.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to state clearly that the A1 Road Rehabilitation Project has not been abandoned. Rather, the project was strategically restructured to ensure better value for money, improved sustainability, and strengthened delivery capacity within the Public Works Department. The A1 Road project was conceptualized under the Capital Investment Program for Resilient Economic Growth, CPREG, in 2019, when the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office and the government of the time agreed on a 6-year program, 2019 to 2025, to fund critical infrastructure, including road construction of approximately 13 kilometers of roadway along the sections of Montserrat's primary Class 1 roadwork. However, following the reorganization under the Capital Investment Program for Resilient Economic Growth, CPREG, the scope was revised to adopt a more phased and cost-effective approach, focused on building in-house capability rather than reliance on external contractors. Under the revised scope, the emphasis shifted and the following were agreed: the procurement, installation, and commissioning of a hot mix asphalt plant and a road planer, training of operators and technicians to ensure safe and effective use of the equipment, and targeted surfacing, patching, and overlay works along critical sections of the A1 corridor, that is, from Cassava Gut to entrance of Buncombe Bay Road, and from the Anglican Church in St. Peter's to Hilltop. Outside of the A1 road network, tangible outcomes have been realized on secondary roads. Overlay and patching works are steadily advancing across sections of the road network, including Jones Hill, Alveston, and Little Bay Road. In addition, resurfacing has been carried out on several C roads in areas such as Fritz, Glebe, Salem, Woodlands, and St. John's, extending the benefits of the project beyond the primary corridor. The reasons for the change in scope were threefold. 1, to reduce delivery risk and costs. 2, to strengthen internal technical capacity. And 3, to defer high-cost reconstruction works while still improving road safety, drivability, and resilience in the short to medium term. The core objectives of the A1 project remain intact. These were to: 1, the reconstruction of the main corridor, that is, to upgrade the approximately 13-kilometer of roadway along the A1 route connecting Braids, St. John's, and Salem, ensure smoother, safer travel for residents and businesses, improve road safety to address dangerous potholes, erosion on uneven surfaces, reduce accident risks, and improve accessibility for emergency services. Let me repeat: to reduce accident risks and improve accessibility for emergency services. To strengthen resilience, that is, we build roads capable of withstanding heavy rainfall, flooding, and storm events. Incorporate modern engineering standards to reduce long-term maintenance costs. Enhance drainage infrastructure. Install and upgrade culverts, side drains, and stormwater systems. Prevent washouts and protect surrounding communities from flood damage. To support economic growth by facilitating reliable transport for goods, services, and tourism. Connect key hubs: Braids, Government Center, Salem, Cultural Hub, and Little Bay, our development zone. The major equipment elements have been delivered and commissioned. Further resurfacing and improvement works along the A1 will now be taken forward through the government's ongoing maintenance and capital programs informed by the conditions on assessment, funding availability, and the wider national priorities. The government of Montserrat will continue to prioritize its road improvement and maintenance works within the available fiscal envelope, sequencing interventions to maximize safety, resilience, and value for money while progressively strengthening in-house delivery capability across the road network. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, supplementary through the Speaker.
Yes, go ahead. Honourable Minister.
For the revised scope of works, do the ministry has an estimated cost of the revised scope of works?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Build.
Madam Speaker, I can seek to get that information for the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, and I will provide it to him. Yes?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And thank you again for recognizing me, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for answering the questions, or the question that's posed and the supplementary. Madam Speaker, through you, I do have a question for the Honourable Minister of Lands, Housing, Environment, Sports and Youth Affairs. Question read: Montserrat has produced competitive athletes despite limited resources. A structured development system is essential to support representation abroad and foster national sporting excellence. Will the Honourable Minister provide A, the programs currently in place to support athlete development across major sporting disciplines; B, the criteria and funding arrangements for national team representation at regional and international events; C, the status and of any partnerships or scholarships for Montserratian athletes; and D, the government's plans for strengthening athlete preparation and competitive performance in 2026.
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Sports.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, all students on entering primary school are exposed to the basics of sports, where they develop through general and multilateral preparation. The more formative years, Madam Speaker, that is the years from 9 to 11 plus, training is extended. To coaches and parents, special talents are noticed, harnessed, and developed within the clubs and the sporting associations. Further development is enhanced by the physical education program, sporting programs, and extracurricular activities offered at the Montserrat Secondary School. Madam Speaker, the government also encourages and offers support to the organizations and associations with their programs to develop coaches, officials, and administrators for sports development. However, Madam Speaker, the associations and clubs with their governing bodies take on the responsibility for elite development. Madam Speaker, Part B, application for funding is made to the Department of Youth and Sports by associations for sports development. Some sports, Madam Speaker, by virtue of their affiliation to their respective governing bodies, will require more funding than others. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the makeup, and I'm talking about the size of the teams, may dictate a requirement for less or more funding. Madam Speaker, performance, popularity, and venue to include location, trending tournaments also determine funding. Part C, Madam Speaker. The Department of Community, Youth and Sport Services and the Montserrat Amateur Athletic Association collaborated and sent 4 athletes to a fit camp in St. Kitts in 2025. Those athletes, Madam Speaker, have received additional visibility and have been included in the system of 10 schools in the United States. Scholarships are given to those who have completed high school, that's MSS, and have the prerequisite performances that external schools or institutions desire. Madam Speaker, through the implementation of a new sports policy, and it's currently going through its required rounds for final approval, we are also looking at other means of providing financing to help elevate sports and increase the support needed in Montserrat. These may include sports funds that both local and diaspora Montserratians can donate to, with the overall aim, Madam Speaker, of increasing the sporting subvention beyond what is provided by the government of Montserrat. Part D, Madam Speaker, plans are afoot to upgrade the facilities, starting with the Little Bay Multipurpose Stadium. This itself would create an atmosphere for sustained and more meaningful training. The department is also seeking an increase in the budget to enable funding for athletes to participate in additional regional and international events, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Minister for his response to the question. I do have questions for the Honourable Minister of Education, Health, Social Services. Question 1. Can the Minister outline the current procedures used to assess and prioritize patients upon arrival at the Casualty Emergency Department, including who conducts the initial assessment, where it takes place, and how medical urgency is determined in situations where patients are required to wait outside before being called?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At the Emergency Department of Glendon, patients initially are seen by a nurse to inform the nurse of the medical complaint. The nurse then does the initial assessment of the patient, and this includes the triage process in order to determine the priority of the complaint among the nurse's other list of patients who are waiting to be seen. Patients who are more unwell or more likely to deteriorate quickly are put to see the doctor before stable patients. The initial assessment and the triage process sometimes occurs in the triage room, which is just outside the casualty, but can also occur inside the main area depending on the staffing levels. When the nurse is busy providing interventions to patients, the doctor can triage the patient in order to avoid delays in care. The gray area occurs when patients have not been assessed, but are waiting to be assessed and are sitting on the bench. Sometimes patients have knocked on the door and have been asked to wait. But if the medical problem that they have is a time-critical medical problem, then this is the area of concern. Most normal hospitals have a reception person who is trained in relevant aspects of triage. So on presenting to the emergency department, if the doctors and nurses are busy, the patients who see the receptionist will communicate that this is a time-critical problem to the receptionist. I am having chest pain. I've just been involved in a terrible accident. My relative can't breathe. And the receptionist will then communicate this information to the clinical persons. The Ministry of Health apologizes to any delays in care that members of the public have experienced, and we are presently working with the Ministry of Finance and the Human Resources Department to ensure that the emergency department is optimally staffed 24 hours a day, and to ensure that on island we are emergency ready. So this will obviously include a reception type person for cases where delays occur due to excessive amounts of patients being seen in the department.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 2. Can the Honourable Minister of Health inform the Honourable House whether there is a formal procedure for peer review and clinical case review, particularly following a serious adverse event or negative patient outcome in our public health system?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This question highlights the need for improvements in clinical governance. We are presently working on this essential aspect of care, trying to create a culture of audit and research, and to ensure that the work that we do is both evidence-based and patient-centered. What we have asked for in the meantime, while we work on this section of health, is to ensure that cases of sudden death or unexpected death are looked at in detail, to ensure that there are not any areas where care was lacking, and to see how an adverse health outcome could have been prevented. The larger topic of quality of care will be highlighted next month when we undergo this Quality Care Commission type review of our health service. And this will provide an independent assessment of service provision in both primary and secondary care, will inform us on how we're doing in emergency care, critical care, and medical evacuation. So we look forward to this and to the recommendations which will be made, and we intend to be taking these recommendations seriously. And again, thanking Prof. Ian Cumming and his team in advance for the support provided to the Ministry of Health in this. And just to reassure Honourable Lewis that it is not a punitive exercise, but rather a positive intervention from which we can grow as a team. And also their individual clinicians who are assessing cases over the past 2 months where persons are questioning why people had to die.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
B of the said question. Specifically, can the Minister state who initiates such reviews, whether independent or multidisciplinary review is used, and how clinical errors or systemic failures are identified and documented?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, the case reviews that the Honourable member is speaking of can be initiated by any member of staff, by the CMO, or if a relative or concerned citizen has written a report complaining about the care that was received. But I think what I was trying to get at earlier is that we're trying to make it our culture that this sort of self-assessment is happening regularly anyway, rather than waiting for an adverse event and then doing a self-assessment.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Question 3. Can the Honourable Minister of Health outline what structured professional development and upskilling opportunities are currently available for doctors and nurses, and what plans are in place to ensure our medical workforce keeps pace with rapid advances in medical science, technology, and best practice?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very important question. I've got a group response. I'd like to thank the Director of Nursing for her response. So she has stated that the Ministry of Health and Social Services have partnered with the UK HSA, NHS England and Keele University, and that the Ministry has signed an MOU with UK HSA to train staff locally. The senior nurses have been introduced to training in leadership and management with Keele University, and there's been a collaborative working partnership towards facilitating educational programs for nurses of all levels. Also, that there is online, just to add to that, recently the nurses at Glendon received training in acute care from this setup. There is online or e-nursing and face-to-face training that are ongoing from Keele. The nurses have been exposed to training in midwifery techniques, aspects of life support, wound assessment and management, performing ECGs, interpreting ECGs, foot care, and the quality improvement in hospitals. There's also an observership program that we're starting where 2 nurses will travel to the UK for 4 weeks at a time to observe practices in nursing management and in theatre techniques. And there is a fellowship program where 2 nurses from the UK are scheduled to participate in an attachment here. This program is typically a merit-based program that provides funding or support for advanced study, research, or professional development, and that fellowships are generally aimed at enhancing the skills of persons locally and creating experiences to participants in their respective fields, and they're an opportunity to learn by sharing knowledge and experiences, opportunity for the rest of the staff when these persons share their knowledge and experiences with other members of staff. Our CMO's input has been that there is an educational segment in the monthly meeting for medical staff where clinical cases are reviewed internally. The ministry has also partnered, as said before, with NHS England, specifically for doctors, and trying to ensure that persons locally can access e-learning as doctors locally to enhance what they're doing in their respective fields.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Minister of Health for answering those health questions. I now have questions for the Honourable Minister of Education, which is the one and said person. The first question is, what measures and enforceable policies are currently in place to safeguard teachers from abuse and mistreatment by students and parents? And how do these policies support teacher retention and the worldwide shortage of educators?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an important question because we often talk about safeguarding students, but important to recognize teachers. The Ministry of Education is presently working on its teacher strengthening and support policy. The draft policy recognizes that teachers are the foundation of Montserrat's education system and are one of the most critical investments in our national resilience, human capacity development, and social stability. The policy recognizes that teacher quality, well-being, and retention cannot be separated from the conditions in which teachers live and work. So in addition to its focus on the well-being of teachers outside the workplace, it also pays attention to the need for teacher safety in schools, insisting on clear reporting for teacher safety concerns, and it speaks to enforcing a clear and published student code of conduct that explicitly expresses respect for teachers and other members of staff. It does not yet include the important aspect of ensuring that teachers have protection from disrespect by parents. So we'll give this some attention and we will be sure to include. Parents can sometimes be very upset about what's happening with their children on the compound and sometimes can lash out at teachers. Presently, the draft policy is being looked at by specialists in education, and we will also be reaching the teachers for their input. It's really important that our teachers review and contribute to any policy which affects them, which affects the students, and policies that affect education in general.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the
Sorry,
Opposition.
Madam
I don't
Speaker.
think you were finished.
Yeah, no, I wasn't finished. Sorry, I write too
Continue.
much and say too much. The Ministry has noted that most of the disruptive behaviour occurs at the Montserrat Secondary School compound. And as said earlier, we've put in place security cameras to both deter students from bad behaviour and to record events on the compound. And we think this will go a long way in keeping teachers and students safe. And the school also benefits from visits by members of the Royal Montserrat Police Service who ensure a safe environment for students and staff periodically.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 2. What behavioral accountability policies are in place to prevent misconduct, promote positive behavior, and support students' social and emotional development within the school context?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ministry's draft anti-bullying policy and national positive behavior policy for schools are both relevant to this question. Both policies will be incorporated in the wider policy framework of education safeguarding policies, and they address the importance of positive behavior in creating learning environments for effective teaching and student development. The anti-bullying policy insists that our students are learning in an environment that is safe, supportive, and respectful, one which is free of bullying, harassment, and discrimination. And again, we are arranging wide discussion on these two policies to ensure that our new education experts, our local teachers, and our Montserratian education overseas are involved in what we're doing here in terms of policy development. Misconduct on the school compound interferes with the learning process. The school is being challenged to intervene early, so at the stage of bullying, and to maximally use the school's counselors to prevent escalation. We are including the input of new safeguarding staff to ensure that we have the correct pathways for addressing misconduct. So there must be an intervention which finds out the cause for the misconduct and attempts to address this, and also ensures that the student who has behaved inappropriately is still able to continue to learn in a safe environment. So ensuring that if things surmount to the point at which a student has been suspended, that the student is actually safe and is continuing to learn at whatever location this period is occurring.
I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Minister for answering the questions posed, as they're pretty critical and some of them are sensitive, and I do appreciate her taking the time to give comprehensive answers, notwithstanding the situation.
Thank you. I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My first question is for the Honourable Minister of Sports. Can the Honourable Minister responsible for sports tell this Honourable House what will be done to encourage and facilitate football matches organised by the Montserrat Football Association during this year?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Sports.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the sports unit stands ready to assist the Montserrat Football Association where possible. However, the scheduling of MFA's events, including the organization of regional and international high-level matches, falls under the responsibility of the relevant governing body. Madam Speaker, while local matches are more readily organized, Montserrat currently has a limited number of professional local players. the government continues to take steps to improve access to Montserrat. Montserrat is home to a first-class football facility. However, we do understand that access over time poses challenges to hosting high-level matches, but Madam Speaker, we are committed to alleviating these issues. These events, Madam Speaker, also require temporary accommodation of a large number of visitors to include teams, officials, media personnel, and supporters. Madam Speaker, through building and construction incentives, we also aim to increase the availability of private accommodation to further assist with addressing this challenge. Madam Speaker, I must say the government remains fully committed to working with all stakeholders to advance the development of sports in Montserrat.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister referred to the fact that government continues to take steps to improve access and how important it is. Could the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House whether ear access on its own, if the government intends to do ear access on its own, or can it really facilitate the football matches and access challenges there, or would there be a need for a ferry?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Sports.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is a totally different question, and a question who should be aimed to the Minister with responsibility for access.
I think I agree with you, so can we move on, Honorable Romeo?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Honourable Minister of Housing tell this Honourable House how many persons will be housed in the houses being built at Drummond's by the government of Montserrat, and how many more volcano evacuees and other persons are still waiting for permanent hurricane-resistant housing on island after 30 years, and how many will need the government of Montserrat's assistance through the provision of social housing?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this question, because of its nature, will be answered in two parts. Firstly, Madam Speaker, the government of Montserrat is constructing a multi-story unit consisting of 4 one-bedroom apartments. This is designed to accommodate 4 persons. This is also phase 1 of the Drummond's development program. Infrastructure construction, and that's just the general building, Madam Speaker, for this unit, has been completed with just finishing works left. There are 4 additional lots within this phase, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the original proposed development plan for that area was reviewed over the past year and adjusted to include the construction of multi-story housing units instead of single-floor units on each of the lots in the development. This approach will increase the carrying capacity of the site and allow for additional persons to be housed. Madam Speaker, the plan is to build out phase 1 of Drummond's. To this end, a new spend proposal has been developed with cost estimates to carry out this proposed build-out. Madam Speaker, with regards to the second half of the question, there are currently 130 persons on the housing wait list. These individuals have applied for programs that are available under the government's housing programs. The government of Montserrat's policy agenda includes the following objectives. 1, improved access to affordable housing for low and middle income residents. And 2, increased social housing stock supported by an equitable allocation policy. Based on this policy agenda, the government of Montserrat has sought innovative ways to provide housing solutions. Madam Speaker, over the years, there have been a number of initiatives that were rolled out to assist with the provision of housing on Montserrat. These programs, Madam Speaker, are in 2 broad categories, and they're both the rented accommodation and the home ownership. Rented accommodation, Madam Speaker. In this program, individuals make an application for consideration to be housed in Government of Montserrat housing units, to include the lookout warden support units. There are currently 71 persons in this category, Madam Speaker. Home ownership, Madam Speaker. In this category, the government of Montserrat has a number of initiatives to facilitate individuals. These programs include, and because I've mentioned them quite a few times in the House, Madam Speaker, I'll just list them out. The financial assistance program, the materials grant program, the home program, the service residential lots program, and then number 5, Madam Speaker, we aim to identify government lands suitable for housing. Madam Speaker, the government of Montserrat has recognized the importance of the availability and the provision of land for the development purposes, and more so, housing development. This government administration has taken the initiative to ensure that lands for potential development are identified. This exercise has been carried out by the Lands and Survey Department in conjunction with the with the Montserrat Land and Development Authority and the Physical Planning Unit. There are pockets of land which are government-owned, and these sites are being mapped and quantified. Additionally, Madam Speaker, these sites are being assessed in terms of the potential for housing subdivision development and the carrying capacity of these sites. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thanks to the Honourable Minister.
Honourable Minister, your mic, please.
Thanks to the Honourable Minister of Sports. My next question is for the Honourable Premier and Minister responsible for access. First question. Most Montserratians are delighted at the introduction of twin-otter operations on Montserrat and also the opening of the St. Martin route in doing so. Can the Honourable Premier tell this Honourable House, A, what Winair's monthly passenger numbers in and out of Montserrat have been on the St. Martin route? What is Winair's on-time performance since they began? How does the limited numbers of passengers allowed on takeoff for the Twin Otter from the John A. Osborne Airport travel numbers as a result of the enforced RISA runway allocation? Let me repeat that. How does the limited numbers of passengers allowed on takeoff for the Twin Otter from the John A. Osborne Airport affect travel numbers as a result of the enforced RISA runway allocation? And D, who bears the cost of the reduced number of passengers allowed to take off from the John A. Osborne Airport? Is it the passengers, the government, or the airline?
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, in May of 2025, the St. Martin route was introduced as a secondary gateway to Montserrat. Winair has since transferred on average 200 passengers on a monthly basis, reaching a high of 534 in December. The load factors were as follows. May and June, there were 200 seats available per month, 2 flights per week. In May, there were 44 passengers of that 200 seats. In June, it grew to 127 passengers. July to November, the frequency moved to 3 days per week, with 300 seats available per month. Passenger utilization was July, 191, August, 277, September, 105, October, 122, November, 205. December, the seats available were 600, with passenger utilization of 534. The total seats available from May to December were 2,500. The number of passengers using those available seats was 1,605 for a 64% utilization rate over the period. Since the start of operations, Winair has been consistent in its on-time performance at 90%. There have been a few days where you had cancellations, the majority of which were outside of the control of the operator. The resale limit for passenger uplift out of Montserrat is determined by calculations undertaken by the pilot on that day and takes into consideration factors such as baggage, weight, including weight of passengers, weather conditions, which may affect departure numbers. Madam Speaker, the government of Montserrat has an agreement with Winair, which outlines specific terms as well as the operational support to be paid monthly. As a consequence, passengers bear no additional cost as a result of the RISA, and any cost is absorbed in the overall agreement between government and Winair. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My second question. In the absence of a ferry, many passengers were forced to pay as much as approximately $700 one way to Montserrat, and a similar amount to depart Montserrat. Can the Honourable Minister tell this House what his government has done to assist those passengers, especially given that many acted under public commitment to provide a ferry for Christmas and were therefore encouraged to purchase their tickets in advance?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Access.
Madam Speaker, this has been a most unfortunate occurrence due to matters outside of our control. However, there were over 1,000 discounted seats available for customers to travel in either direction for the Christmas season as part of efforts to assist passengers during the peak season. The Access Division advertised this initiative on various platforms. As one can imagine, for those who booked early, they benefited from such an initiative. But for those who waited until the last minute, they have been charged according to the operator's regular rates. Madam Speaker, I wish to assure the public that this government remains committed to ensuring that travel in and out of Montserrat is affordable and will maintain regular communication with airline operators to arrive at a solution to this recurring challenge.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. My question was really asking about those who were promised that there'd be a ferry and had to pay $700. So the question is there nothing that you could have done to assist them, seeing that it was not their fault? Was there anything you could have done to reduce the costs for those persons?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I suspect that as a former Minister for Finance and Premier, that he would recognize the challenges in relation to that question.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Yes. My third question. Would the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House, A, the name of the ferry procured from Venezuela, including its length, hull type, and passenger capacity? B, whether the contract has been signed to allow the operation of the said Venezuela ferry, and if so, what is the total contract cost of the ferry? And C, how much has been paid to the contract to date?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the name of the vessel will be effected on registration in Montserrat under our flag. The vessel's length is around 36 meters, with passenger capacity of 240, and the hull type is aluminum. Madam Speaker, a contract in the amount of $1.9 million has been signed to include mobilization. That is US 1.9 million. I can inform this honorable member and this honorable House that to date, the payment made under the contract was $380,000, which is the mobilization cost.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. 380,000 spent, 1.9 million budgeted. That means 1.5 plus still remains. My question, when does this 1.5 plus have to be spent? By what time? And will there be some sort of a deduction, if it is for March 31st, from the amount of time lost and the use of ferry not had?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, when I speak of dollars, if it's a foreign currency, I name the foreign currency. If it is local currency, I do not state that it's EC dollars. But for total elucidation for the member, the contract is 1.9 million US dollars, and the sum which has been paid is 380,000 EC dollars. Okay, I hope that is clarified. And the payments will be made according to the contract.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Madam Speaker, the question was, when does the money have to be spent by? And in his answer, he had 1.9 million US, and then he had 380,000. It didn't say whether EOS or EC. So I was just going by what you had. Sorry. So the question is, when does it have to be spent by, the balance?
Recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, as I explained earlier, when it's a foreign currency, I stipulate the foreign currency. When it's EC dollars, there's no need because that's our local currency. And secondly, Madam Speaker, the payments will be made according to the contract.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
My next question, Madam Speaker. Could the Honorable Premier also tell this Honorable House whether the said Venezuelan ferry has been solar certified and when it is expected to be ready to operate between Antigua and Montserrat?
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, in order for the ferry to have been considered by the Procurement Board, the vessel had to meet all of the specification of which SOLAS was one such. At the moment, we continue to dialogue with the Venezuelan authorities and the owners of the ferry, and will make the announcement when the date of arrival is confirmed.
Honorable Romeo, is that it? I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question is for the Honorable Minister responsible for, just one second, for social services, health, education, and social services. Could the Honorable Minister of Health tell this Honorable House how much funds are available during the latter part of the quarter for this year to provide medevac and hospital and medical care for patients taken overseas for urgent medical care unavailable on island?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Funds for medical evacuation and overseas care abroad in urgent situations comes out of the social protection vote. Unfortunately, the balance left in this vote is $64,919 EC and 50 cents. But also this also comes funds used to provide assistance and support to vulnerable persons and includes local medical assistance, food packages, funeral grants, appliances, utilities, school supplies, school lunch, and bus tickets. This begs for a couple of things. The Ministry of Health and Social Services must put heavy focus this year on sorting the problem of health financing. The cost of medical evacuation for patients overseas, why should this come out of the same vote as food packages and other forms of assistance to the vulnerable? Government of Montserrat will have to decide on how to create a restricted pool of funds to cover the cost of medical evacuation. We must work on how insurance companies are involved, and we must refine the medical evacuation process. Cost control is important, so the closest, most effective tertiary facility that can be used must be used, and this will reduce costs. So why spend $25,000 on transport when you can spend $4,000 on transport to an excellent nearby facility? Also, by engaging with specialists in acute care via telemedicine or on the phone through coordinated care, we may realize that some patients can be managed locally with specialist input in certain emergencies. When a patient really needs to travel for care, we must get it right in terms of location, in terms of the cost to the patient, in terms of the speed of getting the patient to the tertiary facility in order to have their time-critical emergency looked at. And obviously, we must develop our thoughts on how we're looking after the vulnerable on Montserrat.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, you said 64,919.5 left. From what I know, two emergencies overseas between Medivac and medical care in a hospital overseas can wipe that out. So then, are you saying that you don't have enough funds, or would you need a lot more funds to address overseas medical evacuation, medical care?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a recurrent problem that there's inadequate money in that vote to do both things. So we're looking at solutions to this. So the answer is yes, we don't have enough money.
Recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House how many cases of death or severe injury has occurred where there has been a delay in medevacing patients overseas at night or during the daytime?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This response comes with a huge and documented preamble. So the Ministry of Health wants it to be noted that there are multiple factors contributing to deaths of individuals on Montserrat, including the presentations of sudden death, and to assure the public and the Parliament that the Ministry is working on every aspect of this. So one aspect of this is early diagnosis of the complications of diabetes and hypertension and better management of these conditions. So if 20% of our population is diabetic and 30 to 50% are hypertensive, and high cholesterol, overweight, and obesity are prevalent on island, then that means that many persons on island are at risk of developing cerebrovascular disease, which causes stroke, and coronary artery disease, which causes heart attacks, for example. So healthcare at the district clinics is free, but not
Honorable Minister, I'm sorry, I have to intervene here because the question asks how many cases of death or severe injury. It didn't ask you to explain all of this. And Standing Order 25-2 says that the reply shall be confined to the points contained in the question. So you're going on to something that he didn't really ask.
Madam Speaker, this response was submitted to your office at 3:22 and 30 seconds yesterday afternoon, and there was ample time, with all respect, for your department to have a read of it. So would you like me to juggle my response about and get to the point and then give answers after? Or would you like me to read it as presented?
Let this be a caution going forward.
So what do you want me to do, Madam Speaker? Continue on or stop talking?
Continue, because I think the member might be happy to get the information, but in future, please.
Yeah, so at the end of this, I give the basic response, but the point I'm trying to get to is there any number of causes of death, so there are multiple moments at which we can intervene, and to make it clear that it's not just a system failure, it's both failure of persons to present and get themselves managed. So as I continue on as instructed by Madam Speaker, healthcare at the district clinics is free, but not all who should present to the district clinics will attend. So at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, for example, there's nobody at the district clinic. There are patients who are in their homes or in their workplaces who have elevated blood pressures and blood sugars as we speak, have uncontrolled high cholesterol, and have some weight issues that will need addressing. My point here is to say that sometimes people die because their conditions have not been diagnosed prior to that emergency, and that there's more that the ministry can do to get to the patients. And one of the things that I think we can do is get out to the community using the mobile medical van, which is one of the areas that PAHO felt we could do more on when they visited last year on multiple occasions. The second aspect is the health promotion or health education message. So many persons don't hear the health promotion message. They don't know that they have to present. So persons need to know that they should present for screening for diabetes and hypertension, for control of their diabetes and hypertension, and they need to know what the early warning signs of conditions are. For example, a diabetic may present with dizziness, may have dizziness and vomiting in the midst of a heart attack, because in diabetes you can get silent heart attacks. So we need to be able to educate our patients that this means you could be having a heart attack. Or, for example, in the UK, they've had a lot of health promotion efforts aimed at letting people realize what the onset of stroke looks like, so you can get to the hospital on time. My point being here is saying that sometimes people don't realize that they're in the midst of an emergency, and 2 days will pass by and you're having some chest pain or you're having some neurological deficits, and you've not realized that you actually need to intervene. So health promotion here is important in this aspect. And then the creation of care pathways. So there's some persons who present to a district clinic, to a healthcare facility, who perhaps have a little bit of something going on, but there should be a clear pathway for the management of that patient to ensure that, so for example, if a person presents with no pulses on the feet or discoloration of the feet, that person should go down a clear pathway for management so that they don't end up in a more critical situation. So the creation of care pathways is really important. It's not just what happens when you get to the hospital, and also the route, what happens on your way to the hospital. Thankfully, I possibly said earlier, the ambulance service has had an assessment and recommendations have been made to enhance service delivery on your way to hospital, because this chain of survival is so important. I agree this doesn't truly answer the question. And then in the emergency department, there's a lot that can go wrong. And in our present setup of not having 24-hour doctor cover, and in not having a department which adheres to the UK Royal College of Emergency Medicine guidelines for emergency management of conditions, nor the guidelines of the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, insisted on in that department through consultant-led emergency care, and without a proper memorandum of understanding which allows our doctors to get patients out of Montserrat to a tertiary care facility in a hurry, then this entire setup can lead to premature death, can lead to suboptimal management of patients. So as I scroll down through all of this writing, the answer is, this states that the ministry does not have clear and documented evidence of numbers, connecting these numbers to why death occurred. But deaths occurring after transfer in 2025 was 0, so all patients who actually made it out in 2025 survived. This says that in 2024, 3 patients who made it off Montserrat died overseas, and in 2023, the number for that category is 0. In terms of the number of deaths prior to transfer, this, which I've received from the ministry, states that in 2025, 2 patients died prior to transfer that was trying to be arranged, and in 2024, 3 patients died prior to transfer that was trying to be arranged. So it's my estimation that more clarity is needed in this area. The Ministry of Health team are committed to making sure that they can make the data available to say what aspects of care went wrong in these situations. So I think that's really important in learning from our experiences. But it's also important to remember, which is what I was trying to get at with the initial aspects of the response, that there's so many moments during the life of a patient or potential patient where persons, relatives, the health system in primary care, the ambulance service, and the health system in secondary care at the hospital can intervene to reduce premature, untimely death.
And your passion for the subject is duly noted. I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
A supplemental, please, Madam Speaker. I understand the difficulty to give a figure on how many cases that may have, cases of death that may have occurred. Is it similarly difficult, or do you have a way of knowing how many may have been severely injured as a result of the same delay? In that you may not die, but you could be injured. Could you explain that properly to us, please?
Honorable Romeo, you know that is a different thing, but go ahead, Honorable Minister.
I think the honourable member is referring to disability rather than injured. So injured suggests somebody did something to you, whereas disability, you have lived, but your situation is not optimal in terms of your health after. I have not been given a figure for that, but we can have a side conversation to discuss aspects that I know about and plans that the ministry has in place to make sure that our patients are dealt with quickly in their time-critical emergencies so that persons don't have to remain disabled post attempting to receive care which turns out to not be optimal.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My next question is for the Honourable Minister of Build. Could the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House approximately how much it would cost to install runway lighting and other necessary facilities to enable night landing capability at the John A. Osborne Airport?
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Build.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, based on the detailed technical assessment carried out in 2025 by aviation specialists from Manchester Airport Group, the estimated cost to install runway lighting and the associated systems required to enable safe and compliant night landing capability at John A. Osborne Airport is approximately £870,000, excluding civil engineering, risk, and project management costs. This estimate covers the installation and upgrading of airfield ground lighting, including runway threshold and touchdown zone lighting, taxiway edge lighting, and turn pad lighting, together with upgrades to airfield control systems and constant current regulators. It also includes cabling works, integration of aircraft radio-controlled lighting systems, and the training of an online airfield lighting technician to support ongoing operations and maintenance. Additional elements such as obstacle lighting, any required civil works, and final regulatory approvals will be confirmed as part of the detailed design and consultation process with the aviation regulator. No funding has yet been formally allocated, but discussions are ongoing with development partners. Subject to funding and procurement timelines, works would be expected to commence later in 2026.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
My next question, Madam Speaker. During the recent live interview on ZJB, it was stated that the absence of nighttime security at the airport prevents the airline from remaining beyond daylight hours to carry out basic but critical aircraft maintenance. Can the Honourable Minister tell this Honourable House what she will do to see that passenger safety is not compromised by the airline's inability to do necessary maintenance after the airport is closed in the late afternoon?
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Build.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to assure and reassure this Honourable House that the government of Montserrat will do all within its powers to ensure that passenger safety at John A. Osborne Airport is not compromised. Aircraft operating into and out of Montserrat are subject to strict safety, maintenance, and security requirements, and no aircraft is permitted to operate unless those requirements are fully met. It is important to distinguish between aircraft maintenance responsibilities and airport operating arrangements. Aircraft maintenance, including the timing and completion of required checks, remains the responsibility of the airline and its regulators. If required maintenance cannot be completed, the aircraft does not operate. That safeguard ensures passenger safety at all times. The current airport security arrangements are neither accidental nor ad hoc. They are the result of a formal review by the aviation regulator and the confirmation in 2022 that John A. Osborne Airport operates as a Tier 2 airport under the applicable aviation security framework. These arrangements are set out in approved airport security program and supporting standard operating procedures. Under this framework, the airport operates with an appropriate aviation security presence during normal operating hours. Outside of those hours, the airport is closed as a controlled environment with security arrangements in place that are consistent with regulatory requirements. This approach reflects a proportionate, risk-based model suited to the scale and nature of the operations at the airport. Where there is a legitimate operational need for limited access beyond normal hours, for example, following a late arrival, the government is prepared to consider controlled case-by-case access subject to appropriate security, supervision, and regulatory compliance. Any such arrangements necessarily require additional security coverage and any associated costs related solely to the provision of that security, not to access itself. This is not a privately owned airstrip, and the rules must be respected and the government of Montserrat resources considered. The government continues to engage constructively with airlines, airport management, and regulators to ensure that operation arrangements remain practical, compliant, and proportionate, while longer-term improvements to airport capability are progressed in line with funding and regulatory approvals. I wish to emphasize once again that we seek to ensure that no aircraft operates unless it is fully compliant with all maintenance and safety requirements, and passenger safety remains paramount at all times. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
And thanks, Madam Speaker, to the Honorable Dorset for her responses.
That concludes the question.
Motions.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move a motion for the first reading of the Banking Amendment Bill 2026.
Do we have a seconder? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to second the motion for the first reading of the Banking Amendment Bill 2026.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill, shortly entitled the Banking Amendment Bill 2026, should be read a first time. All those in favor say aye. Those against nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The bill will be read a first time.
Banking Amendment Bill 2026.
The next item on the agenda is the Hotels Tax Amendment Bill 2025, and we had left that at committee stage, so the House will now go into committee to consider that bill further. I recognize the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I wish to inform this Honourable House that the bill shortly entitled Hotel Tax Amendment Bill 2025 has been withdrawn and will be resubmitted at a later date once the attendant issues have been sorted out in relation to the law.
Can we have someone second that motion for the withdrawal, please? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the withdrawal of the Hotel Amendment Bill.
It has been moved and seconded that the Hotels Tax Amendment Bill 2025 be withdrawn for resubmission at a later date. All those in favor say aye. Those against nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The bill, Hotels Tax Amendment Bill 2025, has been withdrawn. And the next bill is the police amendment bill, which we left off in committee, but we got a report earlier. Where is the, the chair is not here. Apparently the matter has not been settled yet. It's still with the select committee, so I guess we will continue with the select committee to look at that.
So we move on. Other business, adjournment.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move a motion for the adjournment of this bill. An adjournment sine die. But before I take my seat, with your permission, just one very brief statement. I wish to thank the tailor who took a photograph and was able to make this lovely outfit based solely on a photograph. I wish to thank you very much.
Is the tailor inside here? Do we have a seconder for the adjournment? I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the adjournment of this Honorable House.
I recognize the Honorable Romeo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to share with this Honourable House information that is of direct constitutional, policy, and humanitarian significance to Montserrat, and which until now may not have been brought to the attention of members of this Assembly. In 2025, written questions about Montserrat were asked and answered in the United Kingdom's House of Commons. These questions asked by members and the answers given by the UK ministers and departments speak to the level of support provided to Montserrat and whether the UK believes it has met its responsibilities. They address matters that fall squarely within the lived experience and core responsibilities of this Assembly, including healthcare provision, and medical evacuation capability, and the United Kingdom's duties to Montserrat. I consider it essential, in the interest of transparency, good governance, and the collective responsibility we bear to the people of Montserrat, that this House be fully appraised of what has been said in the UK Parliament on matters affecting our health system, our most vulnerable citizens, and the future viability of our island. Surely we should not operate without the knowledge of what the UK public, media, international bodies, and others are being told. I now place before this Honourable House two such questions and their answers. Question one. Question one is for the Foreign Common and Development Office, and I'm reading the actual question that was read in the House of Commons. The subject was health services for Montserrat, and it was asked on the 21st of November 2025 by Andrew Rosendale, MP for Romford. And this is the question: to ask the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs whether the government will consider providing technical or financial assistance to establish nighttime ear or sea medical evacuation capability in Montserrat. And the answer given was, and I want the Honourable Minister to listen to this very carefully, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office is supporting the government of Montserrat and Air Safety Support International to scope extending Montserrat airport operations to nighttime, including to enable nighttime medical evacuations. And then it says, the FCDO has also supported construction of a new air traffic control tower to ensure regulatory compliance, operational readiness, and staff safety, due to be completed this year. Second question. Question for the Department of Health and Social Care. And the subject, Health Services, Montserrat. And it's asked on the 21st of November 2025 by Andrew Rosendale again. Question. To ask the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care what discussions has been had with the government of Montserrat regarding the requirement that patients accept full financial liability for medivac costs and all overseas medical expenses prior to emergency evacuation, and whether this policy is consistent with the UK support for the territory's health budget and obligations under Article 73 of the UN Charter. Let me repeat that question. To ask the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care what discussions he has had with the government of Montserrat regarding the requirement that patients accept full financial liability for medivac costs and all overseas medical expenses prior to emergency evacuation, and whether this policy is consistent with UK support for the territory's health budget and obligations under Article 73 of the UN Charter. Here's the answer. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office provides budget support to the government of Montserrat. Specific healthcare budget allocations are a matter for the government of Montserrat. The United Kingdom government fulfills all its responsibilities under Article 73 of the United Nations Charter to promote the political, economic, social, educational advancement of its overseas territories. I'm going to repeat the question. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office provides budget support to the government of Montserrat. Specific healthcare budget allocations are a matter for the government of Montserrat. United Kingdom government fulfills all its responsibilities under Article 73 of the United Nations Charter to promote the political, economic, social, and educational advancement of the overseas territories. Madam Speaker, I present this information for the awareness of members and for the official record of this Honourable House. The issues raised in these questions and answers, especially access to healthcare, medical evacuation capability, and the UK's stated obligations to Montserrat, are not theoretical. They have real and direct consequences for our people. They directly affect the lives and well-being of our people every day. Please note that I do not present this information for debate at this time. However, after close examination of the two answers given, what I can say at this point is that there seems to be a contradiction, a critical omission from the second answer, which, once included, reveals the contradiction between the two answers and a root cause for Montserrat's downfall over the past 30 years in particular. Let me repeat that. Please note, I do not present this information for debate at this time. However, after close examination of the two answers given, what I can say at this point is that there seems to be a critical omission from the second answer, which, once included, reveals a contradiction between the two answers and a root cause for the Montserrat's downfall over the past 30 years in particular. It is therefore appropriate that this Assembly is fully aware and take the time to carefully review what has been stated in the United Kingdom Parliament. One must be able to consider and determine whether these statements align with the realities on the ground in Montserrat. As I said, I'm not here to debate or explain any more than I have done. I'm providing the information. The House, you need to take the time, examine it, and discover the issues within these questions. They seem simple, but they're not simple. Accordingly, Madam Speaker, I place these two questions and answers on the record for members' consideration. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, it has been moved and seconded that this Honourable House should stand adjourned, sine die. All those in favour say aye. Those against, nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. This Honourable House now stands adjourned, sine die.